I'm going to take you back to see the movie, and we're going to stop on that scene and review it together.
Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves are the absolute blueprint for cinematic chemistry. But there's one legendary moment where the tension finally snapped. Back in '94, Speed redefined the action genre with a simple, terrifying premise. A city bus rigged to explode if it dropped below 50 miles per hour. It was high stakes, high adrenaline, and pure chaos. But the real explosion was happening between the two leads. Today, we're going behind the scenes of the one specific moment where Keanu's charm was just too much, and Sandra Bullock completely broke character. Was it just a scripted slip-up, or that famous mutual crush finally taking over? Let's get into the scene that proved some sparks are just too hot to handle. Behind the bus, the heartwarming truth of Sandra and Keanu's chemistry. Before we get into that legendary moment where the tension finally snapped, let's talk about the roles that cemented Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock as the ultimate cinematic blueprint. In the 1994 classic Speed, Keanu plays Jack Traven, a fearless LAPD officer who finds himself in a race against time. His mission: to stop a city bus from blowing up. But this wasn't just any bomb. It was rigged by a vengeful extortionist named Howard Payne, played by the terrifyingly brilliant Dennis Hopper. The rules were simple, but deadly. If the bus dropped below 50 miles per hour, it would explode. Amidst this high-stakes chaos, we meet Sandra Bullock as Annie Porter, a passenger who is forced to take the wheel and drive for her life. This heart-pounding premise actually came from a bit of a lucky misunderstanding. Screenwriter Graham Yost was inspired by the 1985 film Runaway Train, after his father mistakenly told him there was a bomb on board that train. That one little error sparked the idea for Speed. Initially, Yost thought about making the bus stay above 20 miles per hour, but a friend suggested pushing it to 50 to really dial up the adrenaline. It worked perfectly. When the movie hit theaters in June 1994, it became a global sensation, raking in $350 million and even snagging 2 Academy Awards. It was a massive win for 20th Century Fox, but the real victory was the electric chemistry between the two leads. Interestingly, the iconic duo we adore almost looked very different. Sandra Bullock wasn't the first choice to play Annie. The role was originally written for a no-nonsense African-American paramedic, and it was first offered to Halle Berry. Halle ended up turning it down because she didn't feel the dialogue was quite there, and joked that she just didn't want to drive a bus. Looking back, she admitted the movie gods might have been off that day, because once Sandra stepped in, magic happened. Sandra had been working since 1987, but Speed was the rocket ship that launched her into international superstardom. The film was so successful that a sequel, Speed 2: Cruise Control, was rushed out a few years later. However, without Keanu Reeves returning to the franchise, the sequel famously flopped and was lambasted by critics. It only proved one thing: you can have the same high-stakes action, but you can't just manufacture the kind of spark Keanu and Sandra shared. Their connection was the secret sauce that made Speed a masterpiece. They weren't just two actors playing parts. They were a lightning bolt caught on film. It's that very connection that leads us to the one specific scene where the professional masks finally fell off, and a simple scripted moment turned into something much more real. The bartender who conquered Hollywood. Sandra Bullock's long road to Speed. Before we witness that legendary chemistry on the bus, we have to look at the woman who brought Annie Porter to life. Long before she was Hollywood's sweetheart, Sandra Bullock was a girl of the world, born in 1964 in Arlington, Virginia. Her life was a vibrant mix of cultures, thanks to her German opera singer mother, Helga, and her American Army employee father, John. This unique upbringing took her across the ocean, where she spent 12 years living in Nuremberg, Vienna, and Salzburg. Growing up, Sandra wasn't just watching from the sidelines. She was immersed in the arts, studying ballet and singing in children's choirs, while her mother toured the grand opera houses of Europe. This international childhood gave her a certain grit and versatility that would later define her acting career. Even a childhood fall into a creek, which left her with a permanent scar above her left eye, felt like a foreshadowing of the tough, relatable characters she would eventually play. By the time she hit high school back in Virginia, she was already a standout, serving as a cheerleader and lighting up the school theater stage. She followed that passion to East Carolina University, earning a degree in drama in 1987. But the road to stardom wasn't paved with gold. Like many legends before her, Sandra moved to Manhattan and paid her dues, working as a bartender and coat checker while grinding through auditions. Her hustle eventually paid off when her performance in an off-Broadway play caught the right eyes. She made her big screen debut in the 1987 film Hang Men, which slowly led to more roles in TV movies and even a short-lived series called Working Girl. Each of these steps was a building block, preparing her for the moment she would step onto that rigged city bus and change the action genre forever. She wasn't just an overnight success. She was a trained performer who had lived 1,000 lives before the world ever knew her name. It's that grounded, hard-working energy that made her the perfect match for a certain soft-spoken leading man, leading us straight into the high-speed sparks that were about to fly. From Miss Congeniality to Mogul, the making of Sandra Bullock's $250 million empire. If you want to know how Sandra Bullock became the ultimate queen of the screen, you have to look at the way she's navigated Hollywood like a total pro. She didn't just settle for being a plucky passenger after her big break. She spent the next few decades building a massive empire. After proving she could hang with action stars like Sylvester Stallone, she took that momentum and ran with it, shifting effortlessly between heart-melting romances and high-stakes thrillers. Whether she was playing a relatable woman looking for love in While You Were Sleeping or a tech expert running for her life in the net, she showed the world that she had the range to handle anything the industry threw her way. By the late 90s, she took things a step further by launching her own production company, Fortis Films. This wasn't just a business move. It was her way of taking the wheel and creating the kind of stories she wanted to tell, like the cult classic Practical Magic. Sandra had this unique talent for being both incredibly funny and deeply vulnerable at the same time. We saw this perfectly in Miss Congeniality, where she played a rough-around-the-edges FBI agent who had to go undercover at a beauty pageant. It was a massive hit, but she refused to be put in a box. She kept pushing herself, taking on serious, gritty roles in movies like Crash and portraying real-life figures like author Harper Lee. The mid-2000s eventually brought us a moment fans had been waiting for, a reunion with Keanu Reeves in the Lake House. Even though they were playing characters separated by time, that undeniable spark was still there, proving their connection wasn't just a one-time thing. Not long after, she reached the absolute top of her game, winning an Academy Award for her powerful role in The Blind Side. From there, she just kept leveling up, whether she was floating in space in the intense drama Gravity or surviving a supernatural apocalypse in the viral hit Bird Box. What makes her journey so incredible is that she never lost that grounded, down-to-earth energy that made us love her in the first place. She went from being a struggling actress in Manhattan to a powerhouse producer and Oscar winner who can lead a jewelry heist in Ocean's 8 or a wild jungle adventure in The Lost City. Every role she took seemed to add a new layer to her legacy, showing a depth that goes way beyond the script. It's this massive, decorated career that makes looking back at her early days so fascinating. Especially that one specific moment on a city bus, where the professional actress finally met her match in a charming co-star. From 20 miles per hour to 50 miles per hour, the lucky mistakes that created a masterpiece. The magic of 1994's Speed lies in the fact that it's a high-stakes, high-adrenaline masterpiece that almost didn't happen the way we remember it. When we watch LAPD officer Jack Traven, played by Keanu Reeves, and the plucky passenger Annie Porter, played by Sandra Bullock, fighting to keep a city bus above 50 miles per hour, we are seeing the final version of a vision that went through dozens of wild changes. This movie is a quintessential pillar of the action genre, but the journey to get it on screen was just as intense as the bomb rigged to the bus. It all started with future Justified showrunner Graham Yost, who sat down with his father, Elwy Yost, a legendary film host in Canada. Graham was looking for a great idea that hadn't reached its full potential, and his father pointed him toward an Akira Kurosawa script that became the 1985 film Runaway Train. In that original story, the tension came from a train with frozen brakes, but Graham saw something more explosive. He reimagined the whole concept, realizing that if you swapped a train for a city bus and added a bomb, the stakes would become personal and claustrophobic. However, early versions of the script were quite different from the finished product we love today. Originally, the bomb was meant to go off at a much slower 20 miles per hour, and instead of the high-speed chaos of LAX, the bus was supposed to circle Dodger Stadium before ending with a massive explosion at the Hollywood sign. Even the characters were in flux. Jeff Daniels' character, Harry, was actually supposed to be the secret villain. It wasn't until a month before filming that they realized the audience would never believe Harry was a bad guy, leading to the creation of the legendary villain played by Dennis Hopper. To really sharpen the edges of this thriller, the production brought in a young Joss Whedon as a script doctor. While he never received official credit due to strict union rules, Graham Yost himself has admitted that Whedon wrote nearly 99% of the movie's dialogue. Whedon completely reworked the supporting cast, turning Alan Ruck's character from a mean lawyer into the lovable, somewhat confused tourist we see on the bus. This shift was vital because it gave the audience someone to root for, making the danger feel real for regular people. Whedon actually loved the final product so much that he still keeps a custom Speed poster in his home that lists him as one of the writers. The casting process was another wild ride that could have led to a totally different cinematic universe. Before Keanu Reeves stepped into Jack Traven's boots, a long list of A-listers like Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, and even Wesley Snipes were approached for the lead role. Director John DeBon eventually chose Keanu after seeing his work in Point Break, wanting to transform him from the Bill and Ted surfer boy archetype into a serious, adult action star. DeBont was so committed to this transformation that he pushed Keanu to look stronger and more capable than ever before. On the other side of the driver's seat, the role of Annie was offered to almost every major actress in Hollywood, from Meryl Streep to Glenn Close to Halle Berry, before Sandra Bullock finally claimed it. Sandra brought an energy to the film that was irreplaceable, even going as far as passing a real bus driving test on her very first try. While the cameras were rolling and the stunts were being prepped, a real-life tragedy struck the production. On Halloween in 1993, Keanu's best friend and fellow actor River Phoenix passed away. The news devastated Keanu, who was in the middle of filming some of the movie's most demanding sequences. To support his grieving star, John DeBont reshuffled the entire shooting schedule, allowing Keanu to work on quieter, less intense scenes while he processed the loss. During his breaks, Keanu would retreat to his trailer to read Hamlet, finding a quiet space to cope with the beyond sad feeling that had taken over. Despite the heavy heart he carried, Keanu's performance remained focused, adding a subtle, stoic weight to Jack Traven that made the character feel even more real. The stunts themselves were a masterclass in practical filmmaking. One of the most famous moments in movie history is the bus jumping over a gap in the freeway, an idea de Bont came up with after seeing an unfinished section of the I-105. It was a massive gamble. On the first attempt, the stunt driver missed the ramp and crashed the bus. On the second try, they nailed the jump, but the bus soared 109 feet through the air, much higher than anticipated, and landed right on top of a row of expensive cameras. To make the jump look like a gap in the road, the crew had to use digital effects to erase the pavement beneath the bus, adding in some birds to make the space feel hollow. Filming on that unfinished highway meant the crew had to do everything themselves, from painting the pavement lines to putting up road signs. It was a grueling environment, but the dedication of the cast and crew was unmatched. The actors were so committed that they often performed their own transitions between the bus and the rescue vehicles, a move that actually earned them extra pay for doing stunt work. This authenticity was felt by audiences during test screenings. People were so hooked on the tension that they refused to look away, even when they had to leave the theater. Some viewers were literally walking backward toward the exit so they wouldn't miss a single frame of the action. The production was so ambitious that they actually ran out of money before the final subway crash could be filmed. When they showed the movie to an audience with animated storyboards for the ending, the reaction was so overwhelmingly positive that the studio finally found the funds to finish the scene properly. Interestingly, the subway train that crashes into Hollywood Boulevard was actually just a bus decorated to look like a train. It's those kinds of creative solutions that made the $30 million budget feel like $100 million on screen. The film went on to become the fifth highest-grossing movie of 1994, proving that audiences were hungry for this kind of relentless, heart-pounding storytelling. Even Quentin Tarantino later named it as one of his favorite movies of all time, noting that there are few movies that provide such a pure sense of exhilaration. He recognized that Speed isn't just about a bomb, it's about the pure exhilaration of the journey. The film used 14 different buses, each modified for a specific purpose. One for high speeds, one for tilted turns, and even one with the front cut off for interior shots. It was a massive mechanical operation that required absolute precision. But at the end of the day, all the buses and explosions were just the backdrop for the real highlight: the connection between Keanu and Sandra. Their chemistry was the secret ingredient that made the high stakes matter. Whether it was Keanu jumping from a moving Jaguar onto the bus, or Sandra navigating a massive vehicle through LA traffic, they moved as a unit. That natural spark is why a sequel without Keanu felt so hollow to fans and critics alike. You can rebuild a bus, and you can recreate a stunt, but you can't manufacture the way those two looked at each other in the middle of chaos. Every bit of behind-the-scenes drama, from the script rewrites to the dangerous freeway jumps, built a foundation for that one legendary moment where the tension finally snapped. It wasn't just a movie about a bus that couldn't slow down. It was a story about two people who, in the middle of a nightmare, found a connection that was too hot to handle. From grief to greatness. How Keanu Reeves filmed Speed after River Phoenix. To really understand why the chemistry between Keanu and Sandra feels so electric, you have to look at the sheer mountain of effort and the what-if scenarios that almost derailed the whole thing. Imagine a world where Jack Traven was played by someone like George Clooney or Bruce Willis. While they are icons in their own right, the movie would have felt like a standard 90s action flick. By choosing Keanu, who was carrying the heavy weight of losing his best friend, the film gained a soul. He wasn't just a tough cop. He was a man who looked like he was genuinely feeling the pressure of the world on his shoulders. This allowed Sandra to step in, not just as a sidekick, but as his emotional anchor, creating a bond that felt way deeper than just a guy saves girl trope. The production was also a masterclass in making the most out of what you have. When they were filming those intense highway scenes, they weren't on a closed studio lot with green screens. They were on an unfinished stretch of the I-105. This meant the cast and crew were living in the LA sun for weeks, dealing with real heat and real grit. One of the bus drivers actually had to be positioned in the second row of seats, or even on the roof to steer, while Sandra held the wheel for the cameras. This proximity created a high-energy environment where everyone was physically involved in the stunt work. It's no wonder the actors felt so connected. They were literally in the trenches together, navigating a massive vehicle that was blowing through cameras and jumping over gaps. Even the smaller details of the script added to this immersive experience. Take Jeff Daniels' character, Harry. Originally, he was supposed to be the villain, the man on the inside who betrayed Jack. But because the cast worked so well together, the producers realized the audience would never believe Harry was a bad guy. They shifted the villainy entirely onto Dennis Hopper's Howard Payne, which left more room for Jack and Harry to have a genuine brotherhood. That decision made Harry's eventual fate in the film much more emotional, and it gave Jack a deeper reason to lean on Annie for support. It's these subtle shifts in the story that allowed the characters to feel like real people rather than just action figures. The film's impact was so strong that it even changed how audiences behaved in theaters. During those early test screenings, people weren't just watching, they were reacting with their whole bodies. The tension was so high that people refused to leave for snacks. And as mentioned, they were literally walking backward to the bathroom to keep their eyes on the screen. This raw excitement is exactly what pushed 20th Century Fox to move the release date up. They knew they had a hit that didn't just rely on explosions, but on the magnetic pull between two people who were never even supposed to be in the same room. One of the funniest and most relatable critiques of the movie came from film critic Janet Maslin, who pointed out a logical gap that Graham Yost hadn't even considered. Why didn't Jack just shoot out the bus tires before it reached 50 miles per hour? Yost later admitted that he simply didn't think of it during the writing process. If he had, he joked he would have had a car hit Jack right as he was about to take the shot. It's these little imperfections that make the movie even more endearing. We're so swept up in the adrenaline that we don't even care about the logic. We just want to see Jack and Annie survive. When you add up the $350 million box office, the 2 Oscars, and the legendary stunts, you still come back to that one core element, the spark. Sandra and Keanu were 2 young actors who were both at a turning point in their lives, thrust into a chaotic production that demanded everything from them. The fact that Sandra passed her bus driving test on the first try is just a small testament to how much she committed to being Annie. She wasn't playing a damsel, she was playing a partner. And Keanu, by insisting on doing many of his own stunts, like the terrifying jump from the Jaguar to the bus, proved he was willing to put his life on the line for the role. Even when John DeBont tried to calm him down by saying the jump was like stepping onto an escalator, Keanu knew the stakes were much higher. Every single one of these behind-the-scenes layers served as the fuel for that one specific moment where the scripted dialogue stopped and the real-life attraction took over. You have the grief, the dangerous jumps, the uncredited writing by Joss Whedon, and the casting musical chairs all coming to a head on a single city bus. It wasn't just a movie anymore. It was a once-in-a-lifetime alignment of talent and timing. So, when we talk about that one scene where Keanu's charm was too much, we're talking about the explosion of all that built-up pressure. It's the scene that proved that while you can build a bus to jump 100 feet, you can't build the kind of love that millions of people are still talking about 30 years later. Sandra Bullock couldn't keep it together with this Keanu Reeves scene. The magic of 1994's Speed didn't just come from the explosive stunts or the ticking clock. It was built on a connection so raw that audiences are still talking about it 30 years later. While Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock weren't the first choices for the roles of Jack Traven and Annie Porter, director Jan de Bont saw a spark between them that changed Hollywood history. This choice kicked off a decades-long friendship that is as legendary as the movie itself. From the very beginning, their bond was forged in a mix of physical intensity and playful awkwardness. During her 1994 audition, Sandra recalled having to do physical scenes that involved rolling around on the floor with Keanu to test their chemistry. At one point, Keanu accidentally stumbled and grabbed her butt, sending him into a complete panic. Sandra just laughed it off, teasingly asking if he was copping a feel, while a flustered Keanu desperately tried to explain himself. This lighthearted energy set the tone for a relationship that was built on mutual respect and a lot of laughter. Even back in the mid-90s, Keanu was already waxing poetic about his co-star, describing her as having a wonderful energy that made everywhere she went feel like springtime. He wasn't just impressed by her talent, he was genuinely captivated by her presence. As the years rolled on, the two stayed in each other's orbits, proving that their connection was much deeper than a standard Hollywood work relationship. Sandra admitted that she kept in touch with Keanu through letters, frequently checking in on him, especially after his infamous motorcycle accidents. She would call him just to make sure he was okay, showing a level of care that goes far beyond a typical co-star bond. They even had a few dinner dates over the years, though they kept things familiar yet just unfamiliar enough to keep a sense of excitement between them. This magnetic pull finally brought them back together on screen in 2006 for the romance The Lake House. By then, they had some life under their belts, and Keanu openly shared that he couldn't quite put into words why they worked so well together. They just did. He praised her for being funny as heck and smart as a whip, while Sandra admitted that filming intimate scenes with him was still scary and exhilarating. Their chemistry was so undeniable that during red carpet events, they would often walk together, goofing around and posing for photos like a pair of high school sweethearts. They even joked about their on-screen kisses, with Keanu playfully teasing Sandra about her marriage at the time, proving they could handle even the most delicate topics with a wink and a smile. The depth of their friendship was on full display when Sandra was honored with an award presented by her past co-stars. While Matthew McConaughey and Hugh Grant shared their praise, it was Keanu's speech that moved her to tears. He spoke from the heart, telling her that her soul and talent were extraordinary, and finishing it off with a classic Keanu compliment: "You are definitely hot." This wasn't just a friend being polite. It was a man who truly saw and appreciated everything she was. Even in a 2014 Reddit AMA, when asked who the biggest movie star he was friends with was, Keanu didn't hesitate to name Sandra Bullock, noting how they still get together for dinner to catch up on life. However, the real internet-breaking moment happened in 2018 when Sandra appeared on The Ellen DeGeneres Show and finally confessed the secret she had been carrying since 1994. She admitted she had a massive crush on Keanu while filming Speed, confessing that it was incredibly hard to be serious because he was just too sweet and too handsome. She lived for years believing the feeling wasn't mutual, assuming there was just something about her he didn't like. But the plot thickened just a few months later, when Keanu sat in that same chair and dropped a bombshell of his own. He revealed to a stunned Ellen and the entire world that he had a crush on her too. Neither of them had any idea they were both pinning for each other on that bus, creating one of the greatest missed connections in cinema history. One of the most charming stories that surfaced from their bond involves a quiet moment at Sandra's home. Years ago, she mentioned to Keanu that she had never tried champagne and truffles. A few days later, Keanu showed up at her door with both in hand, just because he thought she should know what they were like. He didn't stay to make a move. He simply dropped off the treats and went on his way, leaving Sandra in awe of his thoughtfulness. When asked why they never actually dated, Sandra explained that she was afraid it would ruin the incredible friendship they had built. She felt that if they didn't survive a breakup, she would lose one of her favorite people. Though she did admit that Keanu is such a good guy that they probably could have made it work. Even now, after all these years, the two are still looking for ways to get back into the same frame. Keanu has mentioned several times that he's been looking for the perfect project for us, and Sandra has a very specific vision for their future. She joked that she wants to do a comedy with him before they die, playing two funny old people in an RV driving really slowly. She called it the bookend to Speed, where they would spend the whole movie just pissing the world off by taking their time. It's a hilarious image that perfectly captures their shared sense of humor and the ease they feel in each other's company. Sandra even has a long-running joke about her commitment to Keanu, claiming that she cleans his house every Thursday because she lost a bet on the set of Speed. While she admits she only sees him once or twice a year, the way she talks about him makes it clear he is always on her mind. This brings us back to that one legendary moment on the bus where the professional mask finally slipped. Sandra Bullock couldn't keep it together with this Keanu Reeves scene because, for her, the man across from her wasn't just a co-star, he was the crush she thought she'd never have. The tension wasn't just scripted, it was a real-life spark that was just too hot to handle, proving that sometimes the best explosions happen when the cameras aren't even looking for them. What scene in Speed is your favorite? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.